My name is Josh Klipp. I'm an attorney and advocate for urban forests here in San Francisco, the city of St. Francis. At 13.4%, San Francisco has the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States. And despite the fact that in 2014, San Francisco rolled out an urban forest plan to make dramatic changes, since then we have lost thousands more trees. If you live in San Francisco, you may recall that in 2017 we passed Proposition E, which gave responsibility for street trees back to the city, an important, needed change. What you might not have realized is that Prop E only set aside money for the pruning and removal of trees, and no money for planting them. As a result, tree removals are now accelerated, and planting has come to a near standstill. If you live in San Francisco, you may also know we have a lot of parks with big trees in them. Quick note that 13.4% canopy figure includes all of those trees. Additionally, important to note is that the San Francisco Park and Recreation has no urban forest plan and keeps no records of how many trees it cuts down or plants. On top of that, most of those big trees in the parks were planted more than 100 years ago and are currently reaching their end of life. But let's take a step back from San Francisco for a moment. When most of us were in grade school, we learned about the Amazon rainforest, which is nicknamed the lungs of the planet. Today, more than 20% of the Amazon is completely gone, and every minute, 150 acres are lost, totaling 78 million acres every year. Here in San Francisco, as of September 11th, nearly 8,000 fires have burned more than 3 million acres, or 3% of the state, making 2020 the largest wildfire season recorded in California history, and we're not even halfway through it. Without going into further heartbreaking and painful detail, I'll sum this up by noting that, as of right now, nearly 80% of the world's forests have been destroyed or irreparably degraded. Also, according to a recent study, American cities, not forests, lose 36 million trees every single year. This is roughly the equivalent of 600,000 acres of forested woodland lost every year, largely due to development, disease, and poor maintenance. I would encourage all of you right now to sit back and take a deep breath. That is, unless you're watching this in California, in which case only take a deep breath if you're sitting inside a room with a functioning air filter. Because right now, West Coast skies are choked with the ashes of burnt forests, and we have the worst air quality in the history of the world. It's a lot, my friends, it's a lot. But that's why we must have faith. Faith is more than just a religious practice. It's a spiritual promise of hope. In the Laudato Si, the Holy Father Francis draws a direct line between climate change and how we as humans have abused the gift of Mother Earth, which God has endowed to us. But the Pope doesn't just throw his hands up. Instead, he issues an appeal to all of us. He says, "The urgent challenge to protect our common home includes a concern to bring the whole human family together to seek a sustainable and integral development, for we know that things can change. The Creator does not abandon us. He never forsakes his loving plan or repents of having created us. Humanity still has the ability to work together in building our common home." I recently said to someone, propose solutions equal hope. So I want to leave you today with some hope. First, I know city trees aren't going to solve the climate crisis. But at San Francisco's Climate Action Summit in 2018, a European mayor recounted that when he told his council he wanted to plant thousands of trees to combat climate change, they said it wouldn't make a dent. But he did it anyway, and in fact, it did make a dent, in things like reduced energy use and emissions. People walked and biked more rather than drive. Urban heat islands disappeared. One city did this. Imagine if millions of cities did the same. Why not San Francisco? Start right here. Start right now. First, call and email your supervisor and tell them that if San Francisco is serious about combating climate change, we must plant more trees. Trees create oxygen and clean the air that we need to breathe. They act as natural humidifiers and reduce drought. They support the local ecology, which in turn supports the larger ecology that we need to survive. Second, grow a tree. Right now, one of the biggest barriers to planting trees in San Francisco is the fact there is no city nursery. So start one. I've proposed to St. Ignatius the idea of faith communities coming together to crowdsource nurseries, raise 20 trees at one church and 20 at another, and so forth until we have thousands of baby trees ready to be planted in San Francisco by people like all of you. Third, show up at city meetings. Right now, with all the meetings being online, it's easier than ever. But if this city thinks no one cares when trees are cut down, then nothing will change. Finally, plant a tree in your backyard, if you have one, or with a neighbor in theirs. Currently, there is no regulation on the planting or removal of private trees in San Francisco, so plant one. Do some research, figure out what's right for your space, and aim for the most carbon sequestering, ecology supporting, preferably native species tree you can find. We must do more than wring our hands. We must do more than pray. One of my favorite sayings is a West African proverb, and it says, "When you pray, move your feet." This is what the Holy Father is saying in the Laudato Si. We must do more than pray. We must move our feet. You have the ability to do this, together, in action and in faith. And if you don't believe me, then believe the words of St. Francis when he said, "If God can work through me, he can work through anyone."